So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So this first session is around APIs and their impact on 5G development and use cases. So can 5G get a boost from the activity in the API world, the release of new APIs from Camara, Bridge Alliance, and the formation of commercial ventures by many of the operators and other groups globally? So I'll start by asking my panelists to introduce themselves. Otilia, do you want to go first, please?
Hello, Naz. Hello, everyone. So I'm Otilia Anton from Orange, leading network API exposure and monetization.
Thank you.
Happy
Petter?
to be with you here today.
Yeah, and like Otilia has that responsibility for Orange, I'm sharing the same kind of responsibility for Deutsche Telekom, heading a business unit which is called Magenta, API capability exposure. So this is all around bringing these capabilities to the market, to our customers.
Okay, Gabriele?
I am Gabriele. I'm in the Telekom Italia team in the CTO division. I'm dealing more with standards and ecosystem development and innovation in general, and of course, call it also.
Okay, so we'll get straight into this. The first thing around the API ecosystem, we know this has been developing for many years, and operators and other partners have been in this space. The ecosystem to this is fundamental. Operators now cooperating, they have been for many years, but now we see them creating this ecosystem to make network APIs reach a higher potential, I would say, and probably more use cases and more customer benefit. So what do we see as the use cases for APIs and why it's relevant for the 5G network, 4G networks primarily in other countries, but mainly 5G networks? What do we see as the main use cases? So Petra, if I go to you first.
Yeah, happy to get started. So if I look at these use cases, I'd like to differentiate these capabilities into like two categories. So the one category is all around that you can get information out of these mobile networks. So that's the first category. And the second category is that you can get some functionality out of the mobile network, which then allows you to do certain things, to configure that network or whatever you like to do. Now, if you look at that first category, back to what I've started with, you'll find different subcategories of information again. So let's look at the one which is currently available for most use cases. This is all around authentication, and that then goes alongside with fraud prevention. So this is definitely something, especially in these earlier days, where we see many use cases arising, be it now in the banking and financial sector arena or in other sectors. But it doesn't stop there. So we also see the next subcategory, which is all around like device information, like the device location. And that again can be used for many different use cases, from the media industry who wants to ensure that media content is just consumed in a certain region or priced specially for a certain region, where we have seen all the challenges with VPN tunneling to somehow get around whatever was put in place. So this is then the second category. And then the third category is all around customer information. And customer information can be used for many, many things, starting from age verification to address verification and so on. So that's just the start. Many use cases we have already thought of. It's been seen now being implemented in first proof of concepts or even live scenarios. And the second category is even about to start, but let's give also others the chance to chime in and not having a Peter dialogue only.
Thank you. Otilia, do you want to go? Give us a view of your use cases.
Yes, for sure. So coming back to your question as what changes with 5G is that 5G is fundamentally software driven. So the way that we operate and our networks and that we enable innovation is changing. We can now do continuous integration, continuous development, And that changes fundamentally the options that our customers have to interact with connectivity, setting the foundation for personalized on-demand connectivity. So joining Peter on network configuration, network management, not only with 5G, customers can retrieve network information, but they can also change their status. And with that opening, we are powering use cases on geofencing, real-time geofencing, adjusting quality on demand for use cases that weren't possible in the past, be it for live transmissions, for instance, as Orange had for the Olympic Games last year, or for better crowd management, so for large events, or for Industry 4.0 use cases. And doing that on the public network gives us an incredible reach and flexibility, because the customer does not need a secondary device. We can work on these use cases based on the devices that are already on the public network.
Okay.
So for me, in addition to the first identity and anti-fraud, this is becoming a game changer and a lever for innovation for enterprises and developers interacting with operators.
Thank you. Gabriele, give us your view, but also tell us what this new model of cooperation between the operators looks like.
Yes, you mentioned how it is not the first attempt, no, to the API movement. I think some changes in the ecosystem around the telcos are helping on this in this movement towards API. One is the transformation of operator by themselves. For example, the way that we manage to basically to split the network operation and infrastructure from the service part in the company team from FiberCop. It's an example of this way of changing the way of working. And this movement, for example, requires a lot of evolution in the systems inside telecom operators, and this evolution is helped and needs a lot of API for talking among the companies, and this will reflect also in the external customers, of course. Now, for example, we launched an eSIM automatic provisioning without the need of QR codes. This is basically a work of API integration between partners and team. And so this is something that is helping, because the way of working inside companies, inside telecom companies, change, and API are necessary to have this evolution. On the market side, companies, enterprises, and public administration also are moving to the cloud, not only to 5G, but to the cloud movement, where everything is much more API based than in previous IT systems and architectures. They are getting customers to have tools that are not anymore configuration tools, but are programs to configure, to make configuration, to make provisioning, or to make assurance. And this is something that helps companies to better understand the proposition about APIs of telecom operators. Okay. And I think it's, yeah.
Okay, great. So that brings us very nicely onto just looking at the market space. What is it in this API world, from a business to business or business to consumer or business to anyone, in fact, where do we see the industry addressing these use cases to drive value? What is the role of these? You've described the use cases. What's the actual benefit that we're starting to see come about in this new software-defined world for operators and their customers, whether that's businesses or whether that's partners or whether it be end consumers? Otilia, I'll come to you first on this one.
So the first benefit that we see is fraud reduction. With the emergence of similar identity and anti-fraud APIs, these can help fight fraud on different segments, from especially on financial transactions, e-commerce, and reinforce KYC processes in a smoother way for businesses doing having payments online. So that is the first effect that we observe in practice. Then it's about efficiency and ability to reduce certain operations. We're mentioning earlier the example of location. So being able to dynamically, for instance, track valuable assets and have geofencing, knowing when one device is getting out of the area that it is supposed to be. That triggers both security and cost optimization, and also de-risking cases like worker safety. So especially we see more and more the emergence of the drone delivery, drone assessment, assessing critical areas. And there we have benefits both in safety for the workers and ability to have real-time information on critical areas. Like there were recently a lot of natural events that impacted us in Europe and in the US.
Okay. Peter, your view?
Yeah, I would like to answer that question slightly from a different angle. I mean, our challenge is always that we have some technical topics, and when we try to talk about them, there's always the danger that we look at them from a technical perspective, and this is why we also always try to explain them rather in use cases or what's in for the customer. But I would like to move it to a higher level. Now, the challenge we are facing as the telco industry is that we run our networks as an operator in a country, and with that, we typically cover parts of that market from a customer perspective. Now, looking at that starting position, this is fully unattractive for anyone to interact with us, because what would you like to do with parts of a country and if you run like a global business? So whatever we have done in the past in opening up our capabilities, that always got challenged by, why should I interact with you for that small population you then gonna cover? And what now the new attempt and approach is that we first of all not only need to agree on similar things, identical things we're gonna do as the telco industry, and not only that we need to do them somehow similarly and identically, we also need to do them on the same pace, so that it doesn't take like 10 years, so that more or less within the next 1 or 2 years, whatever we have now described as potential use cases will be available for our customers or for the developers who, on behalf of our customers, would like to do something. So we now need to differentiate in that discussion, on the one side, the capabilities by themselves, but also on the other side, how we really make them available to the market. And this is something where you started in your intro, that new things are arising. So this is probably, in addition to looking at use cases, that we also now need to, in addition, look at how does that get accessible for the outside world.
Okay. So Gabriele, one question on this, and maybe you can help with this. So we have these APIs, we have the market opening up, we have access to more and more information. How do you see these, and I'd like to say standards loosely, the cooperation in having a unified API basis, but also as we open up this data, how do we see that factoring into regulation and rules around what is accessible by who and how?
Yeah, interesting question. Peter mentioned, the problem of having a market made of many operators, and the customer don't want to be, of course, they can't be linked only to one operator. Customer that will use API, I mean, that need to have international footprint, for example, application, so on. I think the problem of standard is that we need both a technical standard, we are working a lot on it, to having VTM Forum APIs and GSMA, Camara, Linux Foundation, there are very important initiatives to have a technical footprint, a technical specification of the API. But also we need a so-called runtime operation of this API. Otherwise, you will have, it's a little bit tricky, you will have a technical solution, but should be specialized. As customer of API, you should specialize your software to the different operator, even if trivial is a specialization and is not good for the business. So it step in the problem of having also an operational standardization of using this stuff, no? That will come from organization, from consortia, from commercial initiatives that will put together different operators and providers. And of course, this is sometimes tricky from the point of view of regulation, no? Because you have antitrust rules, you have rules about different. In Europe, we have common rules, but different geography may have different rules about data privacy, data ownership, and this kind of stuff. And I think we are working well in this sense. No, initiatives like the one that are rising in the market will help a lot. And this point that is not only the technical footprint of the API that should be standardized, but also the way of assessing to this API from developers is equally important. And this is something more clear than in the past. And from the regulation point of view, at least working at the macro region will help, no? Like Europe, North America, and so on. Of course, one point that is always on the table is that telecom operators are more regulated, have more control somehow than other businesses that are related to the ICT. But I think on this point of the API, we are working well also on the regulatory side.
Okay, that's great. So, Otilia, I'd ask you first, and then I'll move on to Petter. But from a perspective of a global operator that has operations in many countries, how do you look at the challenges of some of this regulation and security? You mentioned fraud detection. It's really good that we're able to give banks and customers that ability, but then the operator in the chain and ensuring the data is accurate, how do you see that working?
So it is definitely an ecosystem approach. This started from GSMA and Camera, and all operators have a track record on the APIs. But really what changes now is the mindset, the force that we put to make this much more simpler, to make it available to enterprise and developer that don't need to be a network expert in order to interact with operators. So we are working a lot on consistency, and that's why we decided together with Deutsche Telekom and other key operators to support the creation of Aduna, to help us have that ecosystem scale, not only from a technical perspective, because we're already working on the open source project, but from a business perspective, to make this simpler to key players from the industry interacting with us, not to have, coming to your question, not to have a network by network approach. And at the same time, I deeply believe that in this new momentum, at the end of the day, if I take the European angle, there is a European regulation. So I deeply encourage us to think of how we can make these services compatible for a whole regional area. We always, sometimes there may also be the ask, there is this specific point about certain countries. But if we take a step back, our challenge here is to bring levers for innovation that can answer the needs of global customers. So we need to find these common points and make it simpler for enterprise and developers to interact with us. Okay. And I think that there GSMA has a fundamental role if I look at data privacy points, but also from the operator perspective, I'm leading this activity at Orange to be able to have consistency and acceleration of the API that we put forward. And at the same time, we are working via Aduna to try to bring this simplicity and for a bank that has operations worldwide, if there is a use case that is powered by network APIs, to make that a smooth process for them to reach us in the end.
Okay. That's just on that topic, and we've heard about how we're doing this. The drive towards data and cloud computing, I mean, from a global perspective, do you see that drive as enabling some of this, but also increasing the risk? Where do you see this whole openness of a very software-driven set of platforms and APIs moving towards?
So it definitely enables this one, or it's actually pulling and pushing the telco industry to also participate into that. If you look at the broader picture, cloud in itself was mainly started with compute and storage, and the network part was always taken apart to a certain extent. And we as telcos were super protective because we looked at our network and we wanted to ensure that no one really gets access to that. And for us, this is really a dramatic shift, and we are opening up. But that comes alongside then with a lot of interesting questions, be it now on the security side and also on the data privacy side. What does it mean by opening up the network and providing customers with the information we do have? You here and there need consent. You need it in an explicit way. How do you manage that? How do you master the complexity that probably the consent requirements differ from country to country? Who takes care about this one? So I do not want to now die in that complexity, but just outlining that on the one side, it's not that easy, but the entire ecosystem is somehow pushing us that we somehow, as the last part of that entire chain, also now participates. And if you look at IoT cases, for example, they in the past needed an additional hardware component to retrieve location information. But that location information is existing in our networks because we know which cell this device is located to, and we can triangulate and also can get precise information about the location, but actually even can't get manipulated. So it's even more secure if it comes from our network. But we have never provided our customers with that possibility. And this is why in these IoT cases, you needed a GPS sensor to provide you back with the information. Now, these are all the things and cases where these use cases will become much easier for our customers to consume in the future, but we need to overcome these challenges, which I briefly explained. So I believe it's definitely the opportunity, but we have to then also manage our homework and get these challenges solved too.
That's quite interesting. So Gabriele, we heard you discuss about the regulation and other things, and how we're opening this up, and Otilia described the new services, etc. Do you think, and I know customers are demanding more personalized and seamless digital experiences today. They want everything at the touch of their fingers, and do they understand that they are giving the data that used to be considered quite private and information that couldn't be easily found? Do they start to understand that they are allowing this information? They want the more seamless service, but they're also enabling more access to their data.
Yeah, it's the big question, no? I think most customers, but what we feel is that the awareness of the fact that so many data and also personal data are moving, no, to service provider for easiness of a seamless experience, like mentioned, is growing. Also, our customers say, "Oh, something that in the past was not so common." For example, I was talking about a good wine, and I started to receive advertising on this, or otherwise I have to check for a new car, and I have to give a lot of information. Why should I only need to say why I should give also this kind of information? So a part of the also consumers population is growing in awareness on this. on the other side, anyways, there is also a kind of of human being laziness. Now we are so as human being happy when we can make. We are kind of lazy in effort. No, what comes easier is very appreciated. No, in our personal experience. There is a balance also that should come from regulation on this. It's interesting. I'm curious on what Peter will have to say, but I think there is a balance in regulation because something in Europe will be probably too difficult to develop, or will be we need a lot of paperwork of legal check, and if a way of using services becomes common from other providers, basically. This will make always European companies a little bit running up to catch up, and it's something that should get a balance and in communication also to customer.
Thank you. Okay, so Peter, and I'm glad you put your hand up because I've worked in Germany for a while, so I'd love to get your perspective on.
Yeah, but I have probably a different one that you are now expecting because see, here's my vision, and I'd like to be a little provocative with this one. I mean, without any doubt, the tariffs and the price for your mobile usage, they will unfortunately just continue to move into one direction, which is southwards, and we will year over year see a reduced ARPU as the telco industry. But that, from an economical perspective, will really kill us. I mean, let's be honest. How should we invest billions in the next generation of the infrastructure if consumers are not really will to pay and also see prices, and also regulation loves that competition and loves to see that price erosion. But this is unhealthy, and it will come at the cost of the telcos no longer being able to really invest into that network infrastructure. But what if the currency is in the future a different one? If it's not really the 10 euros or 5 euros or whatever amount of euros I'm going to pay for my mobile tariff, what if I share some information which could be interested for some industries and they are willing to pay for that? So if my consumer preferences and also the ones I would like to share with the for example, retail sector would be known to the retail sector, I would love to see that happening, because if I get advertisement, I'd rather like to get it really individualized, hyper-personalized, so that it really fits my need. And if then the retail industry pays for that, we probably see the tariffs in the future where you can get for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 euros your mobile connection, but you also agree upon that some parts of your personal preferences will be shared with some verticals, and out of that the money flows back to the mobile industry, and that might be a very interesting future business model.
That's great. So we'll come on to Otilia in a second, and I had a question for you, Otilia, if you can address that as well. I mean, we keep talking about the commercials and the revenue generation. Do you see this as a specialized service for certain organizations that they can sign up and you look at them first and give them access, or a marketplace where anyone can do this, or a bit of both?
A bit of both in terms of monetization, but I really think it's deeply linked to the way our business model as telco should evolve towards telco as a platform, towards economies of scale. We are definitely, so with every G, we gave more improved latency, so lower latency, improved bandwidth. And now it's more a matter of, as software has been deeply transforming a number of industry. Of course, it is fundamental to also to the telco ecosystem. But now there is the opportunity to shift the business models and to interact in a different way, which is complementary from regular day-to-day interaction in buying subscriptions from telco. So I really think that in terms of monetization, this is a new lever. it doesn't substitute the old one. It is a transformation. And at the same time, both are important as both, I'd say, being able to focus on precise customer needs and drill down on a vertical and on a use case that will not disappear. And at the same time, with the scalability, this will enable us to have access to a lot of range of both economics and use cases. But I wanted just to, before we deep dive into monetization, and I saw there was a question on that, to come back also just a bit on the data side, because we are seen as telcos as trusted brands. So we do not play with the data of our customers. On the use cases we are looking at, consent management, data privacy is key. So we distinguish between B2B use cases and B2B2C. And we want the customer to be in control of the data, on the way their data is being used. So for all use cases that involve KYC, that involve number verification, SIM swap, we are very careful to make sure that the use case that's processing that is within data privacy regulation. So this is a key topic for us. It's not about doing whatever with customer data. It's the customer that decides what app he uses and what kind of access he wants to give to that kind of application.
Excellent, thank you. I'm conscious we have 10 minutes. I have one more question. We have a set of questions online, but we also have time for the audience to ask some questions. So I'm just going to ask very quickly, Peter, could you tell us why this is going to be any different to what the operators have done before?
I mean, we talked about this company called Aduna, which probably is not known to everyone yet. So this is a joint venture which has been announced in September, which is about, the transaction is about to get finalized now within the next weeks, where Ericsson holds 50% and then 10 global telcos have invested into the other 50%. Now, this really somehow defines the different approach this industry is taken. So first of all, it's not a joint venture amongst telcos. They have chosen one somehow strong partner to also help ensuring that it's not endless discussions the telcos are having amongst each other. Also, the way this one will be set up, that joint venture has not been built to generate additional profits. It's just have been built to overcome the challenges the telco industry has, that they are not a hyperscaling play as telcos, that everyone sits in their country with their network, and that it's everything else but a global operations they do have. So this is overcome by this joint venture by Aduna. So just for the purpose to ensure global scalability, aggregation of APIs, ease of use by not having hundreds of different SLAs, hundreds of different price points where the developers got totally confused. This abstraction layer is needed so that it behaves as if there was a telco hyperscaling play, like we know them in the IT arena. And this is why, and I want to stop here because there are many more details we have put in the design of Aduna, where we now believe that is probably still not guaranteed to be successful, but definitely we have overcome a few barriers we have seen in the past.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to move on to the questions online before we open up to anyone asking questions on the call. And I want to package three of the questions. Otilia, you mentioned these already. So monetization revenues are quite small compared to telco revenues. Advertising cake and trying to get a piece of that pie for the operators themselves, but then also the ABI research suggesting 150 billion in revenues by 2030 being wishful thinking. How do you see the ecosystem playing out from a revenue and monetization perspective very quickly?
So I see it as a transformative opportunity for us. There are lots of market studies out there, and there are pros and cons from my perspective. I think that the most important is building data based on enterprise and customer use cases. At the beginning, for sure, for 2025, 2026, 2020, even towards 2027, this is taking up slowly. I think that we will see a strong inflection once 5G SA becomes available more broadly. We are just at the beginning of the 5G SA availability. In order to unlock some of the most valuable use cases, it will take a bit of time in the next couple of years to see that emerging at a consistent scale between multiple markets. So I see it as definitely a strong opportunity for the telco ecosystem that can become a game changer even for the overall financial model, because it's the path towards network as a service in the end. And once we say that, network as a service is becoming the core business of tomorrow. So for sure, now we see it taking up slowly, but with efforts like Aduna and efforts from all operators, as we see the good dynamic and engagement from operators to support this, I'm sure we will see a very good impact in the 12 months to come. And at the same time, this is bridging the gaps between the way we deliver on-demand personalized connectivity. So we'll also use it to have easier way to move control, to open a slice, to pilot a mobile private network solution, to integrate to that edge computing, device management. So it's not only addressing one use case, one vertical, but building those transitions in a smooth way for a number of core products that we offer to the enterprise sector. So definitely I see it as a game changer, deeply linked with network as a service perspective.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious. I'll see if there's any questions from anyone online, and otherwise we'll go back to the online questions we've got through the chat function. Okay, so we'll pick up, I think we've got time for one more question, and I'm going to pick a difficult one. So, Gabriele, how do you think we'll manage the complexity of MVNOs, virtual operators, and allowing them access to 100% of the APIs compared to the parent MNO?
We mentioned the problem of tariff and prices getting down in Europe, in general, in the telecom sector, also in comparison to inflation, for example, or to other services like energy or gas and so on. And MVNO in Italy have, for example, very, very aggressive pricing. It's really just for the audience. No, we have, some MVNO is 5 euros for 50 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes per month. So it's really and we have to manage them the same way, I think, of enterprises. It's not possible to have a traditional way of making contracts with this kind of companies and to have this kind of prices. Contracts become somehow more automated by the way of APIs and the interaction between the two companies. And at the end, it's important that if we put in a perspective where enterprises will buy also from MVNO and not only from the mobile operators, is even more important to have a single commercial and technical contact point for APIs, no? That is independent from the specific operator that you're using in a certain country or in multiple countries. So from this point of view, initiatives like Aduna and so on will really help also customers of MVNO to access to the API ecosystem and to platform ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one more. This one, Petra, I'll come to you on this one. In terms of the liability, we're offering APIs out to businesses that's looking at customer data and pulling some of that data. Where does the liability sit? How do you see that being regulated and the impact on the operators?
This is really a tough and a challenging one. So first of all, it all goes alongside with the customer consent, and the customer provides consent that we share this information, and that might be a good reason for us to do so. Let's take the example of age verification, where the customer would like to consume something which is just consumable at a certain age, and whatever had been used as a process in the past had been too complex, and we all agree upon that this is now a significantly more better user experience. In that particular case, we provide that information back, and we rely on the information we have gained throughout our processes. And with that, we will also then have certain answers to the specific liability in our terms and conditions. Depending on that kind of use cases, we are then providing back. But the answer will be then very specific on the individual use cases. Are we now talking about a bank transaction, or are we talking about acquiring alcoholic drinks, or whatever is now the use case we're going to talk about?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a fantastic time speaking to you all. I apologize we didn't get through to all of the questions online, but it's been a great panel. I hope you enjoy the rest of the 5G conference going on today, and I wish you all the best.